Hey everyone, I heard a rumor when I started playing Dead by Daylight that there was something inside of these barrels. Or, more specifically, someone. There was a tapping or a response coming from them when you were close, and a scream when you swung at it. And I remember hearing this rumor through a friend of a friend, and going onto the map with all the barrels, the game. I remember doing it and hearing nothing, so I dropped it. Remembering the rumor again, a year later I came back to it and went back to the barrels. This time, nothing, so I sit for a while, I listened, then I swung again, then I heard a shuffle, a tapping back from within maybe. No, unfortunately it was just a quirk of the pig. There's this small shuffle sound after each swing. So I let another year or so pass. Maybe it got removed because the map of the game got reworked. Maybe it was only possible back then. It was an old rumor after all. Or maybe it was a specific barrel. So I went around the map and checked every barrel and hit every barrel I could too. Just the average day for someone who frequently makes videos on stuff like this. But nothing. So I came back again recently. There had to be something that had sparked this rumor, aside someone just making it up. Similar rumors have appeared before, but this one I couldn't even find the origin of, which confused me more. Things like this do exist in the game. Midwich is probably the best example, with the girl crying in the bathroom stall. It got me thinking, which other maps have these barrels? Maybe this sound is not just unique to the game, but instead is related to the barrels somewhere else. After all, I had just assumed it was on the game, to be fair, because that's where all the barrels are. I looked through the different realms and tried to find these barrels. Eventually it led me to Groaning Storehouse. Within the storehouse are barrels. Also within is a creaking and tapping sound. If you try to block out the creaking and some of the taps, you can actually track some of the tapping to this shelf where 3 barrels lie. Or at least it sort of seems so. I think the tapping is mostly non-directional, although it does seem to radiate from this side of the storehouse. What's even more interesting is the barrels themselves are covered in handprints, almost like there could have been a struggle getting someone in there. This sound is probably what the person heard, but it's probably not tied to the barrels even, it's tied to the main building or structure. What this person heard all those years ago was probably this, a tapping sound coming from the barrel. Maybe the scream they heard when they swung at it could have just been a survivor running past or something, I don't know. There's also that ghost bug sometimes where if survivors die nearby, their sounds of pain can still be heard even if they're not in the trial anymore. So who knows, maybe it was something like that. Or maybe it was just lost in translation along the way, or embellished possibly. Looking into the lore of the storehouse, and these croaks and groans do align with it. They are the sounds of the incinerated labourers who worked for the Macmillans. Possibly some were even disposed of within the barrels. So the myth of someone within the barrel does sort of have some credibility with a bit of lore interpretation. It got me thinking too that a lot of stuff is probably overlooked. How many times in a game of Dead by Daylight do you stop to listen? Do you hear all the sounds that are really around you? It made me wonder, what else are we missing? What else is there to hear within these main structures? What mysteries to uncover about the stories and occurrences that went on within these various locations? What can we piece together? Some maps admittedly were kinda boring. They had fairly generic sounds and nothing that really tied to map specific lore. The map that was the least interesting in fact was Skull Merchant's map. All you can hear really are these massive generators that chug along really loudly and block almost everything else out. I thought that was kind of funny. But what did I find? Well, a decent amount. Before we look at them though, I want to mention why I feel these are some of the darkest parts of the game. It sort of originates from the basement. If you head on down there, you can hear the sounds of presumably survivors who have died down there. The walls are exploding with this strange orange glow, and the groans of pain and anguish can be heard bursting out. The basement is powerful because it's the closest part within the trials to the entity itself. Therefore, what we're hearing is probably the trapped souls of people. And so in the same way, in the second most powerful location on the map, the main structures, we're also likely hearing these same remnants of people tied to the place, maybe even trapped within its walls, torn from the memories of the characters of the realm. Heading over to the ironworks where the workers were incinerated, and you can hear the machinery clunk, and possibly even its activation when it burned the workers. In Coal Tower you can hear creaks and groans, and it's possibly from the explosion that happened there, causing the structure's appearance to begin with. The suffocation pit is unique in that the sounds only play on a certain part of the map, which is the entrance to the mine, where the trapper caved in the tunnels. If you stand around here, you can hear crumbling stone. And something faint, possibly the workers. On Fractured Cowshed, if you come to the area inside and nearby to where Billy's parents kept him, you can hear what sounds like one of his screams, which is quite daunting and scary. Almost like the soul of young Billy is trapped. The rancid abattoir is really creepy too, with the sounds of cattle crying out despite them all being dead. It's possible it's the victims of Billy's 2 based on the flavor text. So that was the mystery of the barrel. Quite interesting, but sort of disappointing, admittedly. This next one I call the Legacy Skull. This is one that actually originates from me. When I saw it, I actually didn't think that much of it, and I'm not too sure why. Basically, I was playing a game of Dead by Daylight on the map Grim Pantry, and I remember running in the pantry itself and coming across one of the many skulls scattered across the structure, except this skull had a texture much like the Legacy Prestige cosmetics. I remember thinking, that's weird, and sort of went on with the match. It was only a bit later in a different match that I looked for it, and it wasn't there. So I loaded up customs and searched for it. I tried loading different iterations, loading up with different killers and so on, but I could never find it. And it got me thinking, what was that then? Because I definitely saw it. This time it wasn't a case of a rumor, it was me remembering seeing it. My first thought was, well, it's a game and these things happen, maybe it was a visual bug. A texture got mixed up for some reason, and one of the skulls on the map had a legacy texture. That's not very interesting though. My second thought was that maybe it could be a mistake on my part. Maybe it was the lighting, maybe it was another texture entirely that I mistook, maybe a hex totem which I somehow mistook for a stationary single skull. Maybe it was something completely different basically. So I did some testing. Whilst chasing a survivor around, I saw that scratch marks could appear on the skulls, so I thought maybe that could have caused it. It's a similar-ish color, and the spattering of them could maybe have made me mistake it for Legacy, but I was on Survivor at the time, so that doesn't make too much sense unless I had that Hattie perk on. Then I thought it could be a blighted substance. After all, the Blight and the Legacy look are fairly similar, so I loaded up Blight and tried to recreate it, but to little success. I sort of got one of the skulls to look a bit blighted, but it was at a weird angle, and the blight fades away after a second or two, so it wouldn't make sense how I found the skull and it remained with its legacy or blight texture. Then I considered it could be the endgame collapse causing it to have a weird texture as the trial crumbles, so I tried that too, and nothing. In fact, the swamp doesn't even seem to break in the same way the other maps do. For this one, I'm not too sure what to conclude. In some ways, I just think, well, maybe I just didn't see that, or I imagined it, or I mixed up a memory with something else. It's possible, but I swear I saw it. Maybe a super rare bug, or I don't know. I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. Contrary to popular belief. Our final one today is related to the lobby and the campfire. One story I've heard, and this one I actually think I saw on Twitter too. Another thing I swear I've seen, and now I'm trying to recreate. And this is that Talita and Renato squabble and slap their hands at each other at the campfire in the lobby. They're sister and brother, of course, and so they have a small play fight apparently. And I remember seeing a clip of this too. For this to work though, they have to be side by side, I guess, in order to reach each other. Of course, the combinations on this initial screen in the campfire lobby are also completely random. Therefore, I had to go through a bunch of iterations as Talita to try and get her brother next to her. I got it eventually, and nothing. She does look to the side over to him, but they don't interact. They just do their usual poses. So I considered maybe it was to do with log placement. Maybe they need to be in the center, or in a different spot where the selectable character isn't, which is the end spot. Whoever you're selected to play as appears here. So I picked someone else and tried to get them to spawn together. This took even longer, by the way, because it now required 2 random characters to be not only spawning together, but also next to each other. But I did it. It took a few hundred tries probably, but it was worth it because of the outcome. I finally got them together, and, well, nothing, it was nothing. So I thought about Ash and his secret voice lines and how you have to wait for 5 minutes for something to happen. So I waited 5 minutes, and nothing. There was nothing still. Yeah, that was a waste of time, I suppose. I suppose all of them were sort of a waste of time. So yeah, that's the video for today. That's the video. A video about how I wasted my time investigating lots of DBD myths. Many of them I may have just literally imagined. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. So there you have it, an investigation into 3 of DBD's lost myths. A bit of a disappointing conclusion, admittedly, but I feel like I sort of solved at least one of them. I do hope you enjoyed, and if anyone has any idea on how these things could happen or how to trigger them, do let me know. And let me know if you've ever heard of these either, because I feel like I go pretty deep when I try to research stuff, so I feel like a lot of these probably haven't been heard about before. I mean, the Legacy Skull one in fairness is from me, so I doubt anyone's ever heard of that one, but for the other 2, I reckon there's gotta be someone out there who knows about those, at least a little bit. So yeah, thanks for watching, and goodbye.